Welcome to Darkwake Signal. What you're about to hear was classified as a routine patrol. A British corvette sent to hunt enemy supply vessels in the North Atlantic. Standard orders, experienced crew, 14 days at sea. The mission was approved under normal conditions. Let's dive in. The patrol orders were issued on October 9, 1943. Captain Rémi Valcour received them in a sealed envelope marked Operational Priority 3, which meant the mission was classified but not urgent. The envelope contained a single sheet of typed instructions and a chart with 3 marked coordinates in the North Atlantic, roughly 200 nautical miles west of the Outer Hebrides. The mission was standard interdiction. His vessel, a modified corvette designated K-447, was to patrol the marked zones and engage any enemy supply vessels attempting to move south toward occupied France. Rules of engagement were clear: identify, pursue, destroy. Radio silence was mandatory except for contact reports. Duration: 14 days. Valcour had commanded K-447 for 19 months. The ship was fast, well-armed for its size, and crewed by men who understood that survival in the North Atlantic required discipline more than courage. He trusted his officers, respected his crew, and followed procedure without deviation. That approach had kept them alive through 12 previous patrols. He called the senior officers to his cabin at 1900 hours. First Officer Sebastian Kervedec arrived first, carrying the navigation charts. Chief Gunner Mathis Fornel followed, his hands stained with grease from inspecting the forward gun mounts. Navigator Loic Anselm and Signal Officer Arnaud Bellier entered together, both looking tired. They had just completed a 10-day patrol 3 days earlier. Valcour spread the orders on the table. New assignment: departure at 0400 hours. We patrol these 3 zones for 2 weeks, engage any targets of opportunity, maintain radio silence unless contact is made. Kervedec studied the coordinates. These zones overlap with the hunting grounds we worked last month. Correct. We saw nothing last month. No enemy traffic, no sightings, no intercepts. Command believes the routes have shifted. We verify that. Fornel leaned over the chart. 2 weeks in open water. If we find nothing again, that's fuel wasted. That is not our decision to make. Valcour's tone was flat. We patrol. We report. If the zones are empty, we report that. Anselm traced the marked areas with his finger. The currents in this region shift unpredictably this time of year. Navigation will require constant adjustment. Then make constant adjustments. Bellier, who had been silent, spoke quietly. Captain, the last 2 patrols in this sector were both recalled early. I processed the recall orders myself. Neither ship reported contact before withdrawal. Valcour looked at him. Were reasons given? Mechanical failure on one, weather conditions on the other. And you believe those reasons? Bellier hesitated. The weather report I filed 3 weeks ago showed stable conditions in that sector for 8 consecutive days. The cabin was quiet for a moment. Valcour folded the orders and placed them in his desk drawer. We depart at 0400. Prepare the crew. Dismissed. The officers filed out. Kervedec remained behind. Rémi, he said quietly, using the captain's first name in the way he only did when they were alone. Something is wrong with this assignment. Explain. 2 ships recalled. No enemy contact in a month. And now they send us back to the same location with identical orders. Either command believes we will find something the others missed, or they are testing something. Testing what? I do not know. But I have been reading patrol logs. 4 ships have worked this sector in the last 6 months. 3 of them requested early withdrawal. The 4th never filed a final report. Valcour met his gaze. The 4th ship returned to port. Yes, but the captain was relieved of command 2 days later. Medical reasons. He has not returned to duty. Then we will be cautious. Kervedec nodded slowly. Cautious. Yes. But if we encounter what the others encountered, caution may not be enough. What do you think they encountered? I do not know. But they stopped wanting to be there. K447 departed Portsmouth at 0347 hours under a moonless sky. The North Atlantic was calm, the wind light, the visibility poor but manageable. Valcour stood on the bridge as the harbor lights faded behind them, watching the dark water spread endlessly ahead. By 1200 hours, they had cleared the coastal shipping lanes and entered open ocean. The sky remained overcast, a solid gray ceiling that pressed down on the water. Anselm reported their position every hour, and each time the numbers confirmed they were exactly where they should be. On the second day they reached the first patrol zone. The sea was empty. No ships, no debris, no indication that anything had passed through in weeks. Fornell kept the gun crews at ready stations, but there was nothing to fire at. On the third day, Bellier received a brief transmission from command. It contained no new orders, only a confirmation that their departure had been logged. The message was routine, but its brevity felt wrong. Bellier mentioned it to Kervidec, who mentioned it to Valcour. They know we are here, Kervidec said. They are not asking for status. They are just confirming we departed. That is standard procedure. It is also what you send when you do not expect a response. Valcour looked at him. You think they expect us to go silent? I think they expect something to happen out here, and they want a record that we were sent. On the fourth day, the wind shifted. It came from the north, cold and steady, bringing fog that reduced visibility to less than 50 meters. Anselm adjusted their course to compensate for drift, but the corrections felt wrong. He recalculated twice, checked his instruments, and recalculated again. Captain, he said finally, we are off course. Valcour joined him at the navigation table. By how much? 4 degrees northeast. We should have drifted south with the wind, but we have moved north. Current? No current in this region should push us that direction. Not with this wind. Then correct and continue. Anselm made the adjustment. 2 hours later, they were off course again. Same direction, same 4 degrees. That night, Valcour stood on deck and watched the fog move across the water. It did not behave like normal fog. It rolled in patterns, thickening in some areas while thinning in others, as if something beneath the surface was shaping it. Fornell joined him, lighting a cigarette despite regulations. Visibility is getting worse, Fornell said. Yes. Gun crews cannot engage what they cannot see. I am aware. We have been out here 4 days. We have seen nothing. If this mission is about finding enemy traffic, we are wasting time. Valcour did not answer immediately. He watched the fog curl and shift. What would you recommend? Return to port. File a report that the sector is clear. Let command send someone else if they want confirmation. And if they sent us specifically because we follow orders without questioning them? Fornell took a long drag on his cigarette. Then we are here because someone wants reliable witnesses. Witnesses to what? I do not know. But I know how this feels. It feels like we are being positioned. On the 5th day, they entered the 2nd patrol zone. The fog lifted briefly around noon, and for 2 hours they had clear visibility. The ocean was empty in every direction. No ships, no wreckage, no birds. Just gray water stretching to a gray horizon. At 1,400 hours, Bellier reported a radio signal. Brief, fragmented, no clear source. He attempted to triangulate, but the signal faded before he could establish a fix. Could it have been a distress call? Valcour asked. Possibly. Or a transmission echo. Sometimes signals bounce off atmospheric layers and travel farther than they should. What language? I could not tell. It was too broken. If you receive it again, record it. That night, Anselm reported another course deviation. This time 6 degrees northeast. He corrected immediately, but 3 hours later they had drifted again. Same direction. Same angle. It is as if something is pulling us, Anselm said quietly. Current does not pull in angles, Kervidek replied. Current flows. I know. That is why I said as if. Valcour studied the chart. Their patrol route should have kept them moving in a wide circular pattern through all three zones. Instead, they were being drawn northeast toward the edge of the third zone, toward an area marked on the chart with a small notation, depth exceeds survey. We continue the patrol, Valcour said, but we double the watch. I want eyes on the water at all times. On the sixth day, the fog returned thicker than before. Visibility dropped to 20 meters. The crew moved carefully, speaking in low voices as if afraid to disturb something. At 0800 hours, a lookout reported a shape in the water off the port side. Valcour and Kervidek went to the rail. Through the fog, they could see something dark and massive just beneath the surface. It is not moving, the lookout said. Fornell arrived with binoculars. He scanned the shape for a long moment. It could be a whale. It is not moving, the lookout repeated. They watched for 5 minutes. The shape remained perfectly still, suspended just below the waterline. Then slowly it sank. Not quickly, not with the sudden dive of something alive. It simply descended, fading into the deeper water until it disappeared. Log it, Valcour said. As what? Kervidek asked. Submerged object. Unidentified. That afternoon, Bellier received the signal again. This time it lasted longer, almost 30 seconds. He recorded it and played it back for Valcour. The voice was male, speaking in fragments. The language sounded like English, but the words were distorted, stretched, as if the speaker was moving away from the microphone while talking. Grid, holding, cannot, repeat, cannot. Can you clean it up? Valcour asked. Bellier adjusted the recording, filtering out static. The voice became slightly clearer. Holding position, cannot return, repeat, cannot return, something. Then silence. Is there more? Valcour asked. No. The signal cut off. Do we respond? If it is a distress call, yes. But if it is not, what else would it be? Bellier looked uncomfortable. I do not know, but the signal strength suggests it was transmitted from very close, within 5 kilometers. If a ship is that close, we should be able to see it. Valcour walked to the porthole and looked out at the fog, unless it does not want to be seen. On the 7th day, the crew began to notice the silence. The ocean is never truly quiet. There is always the sound of waves, wind, the creak of the ship, the movement of water. But now those sounds seemed muted, as if they were traveling through something thicker than air. Men spoke less. Footsteps became careful. Even the engine seemed quieter, its rhythm steady but somehow distant. At 1100 hours, Anselm came to the bridge with his charts. His hands were shaking slightly. Captain, we have a problem. Report. We are no longer in the patrol zone. Valcour took the chart. Their position was marked clearly, plotted from the last 3 celestial fixes. They had drifted nearly 30 kilometers northeast, well beyond the boundary of the third zone. How long have we been off course? At least 12 hours. Possibly longer. The drift has been constant. And you did not notice? I have been making corrections every 2 hours. But each time I correct, we drift back. It is as if the ship is being drawn. Ships are not drawn. They are pushed by wind or pulled by current. I know, but we are moving against both. Valcour studied the chart. Their current position was marked with a small circle in pencil. Beyond that circle, the chart showed only depth soundings, all of them marked with asterisks indicating approximate. The notation read, unverified depths. Survey incomplete. Turn us around, Valcour said. Set course due west. Full speed. Anselm relayed the order. The ship came about, the engine noise increasing as they pushed to maximum cruising speed. For 1 hour they made progress. Then Anselm rechecked their position. They had moved less than 2 kilometers. "We are moving," Anselm said quietly, "but it is like we are walking into wind. Every kilometer forward costs us more fuel than it should." Corvette joined them. "We should stop the engines. Drift. See what happens." "We are already drifting," Anselm said. "That is the problem. Then we drift deliberately. Let the ship move where it wants to move. At least then we will know." Valcour considered this. It violated every operational principle he knew, but continuing to burn fuel while making no progress violated logic. "All stop," he ordered. The engine died. The ship settled into the water, rocking gently. The fog pressed close on all sides. For 10 minutes nothing happened. Then Bellier's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, I am receiving the signal again." Valcour went to the radio room. Bellier had the transmission on speaker. The voice was clearer now, no static, no distortion. It sounded calm, almost conversational. "Holding position at grid reference. Unable to return to previous. Have been advised to wait. Duration unknown. Repeat. Duration unknown." "Is that live?" Valcour asked. "I think so. The signal strength is constant." "Can you respond?" Bellier picked up the microphone, hesitated, then keyed it. "Unidentified station, this is K447. Please identify and state your position." "Over." Silence. Then the voice again. "Holding position. Cannot return." "They are not responding to us," Corvette said. "They are just transmitting." "Or they are responding," Valcour said quietly. "And that is the answer." At 1800 hours, as the light began to fail, a lookout reported a shape ahead. Valcour went to the bow. Through the fog, barely visible, was the outline of a ship. It was perhaps 200 meters away, stationary, facing them. The hull was dark, no lights, no movement on deck. It looked like a corvette, similar in size to K447. "Signal them," Valcour ordered. Bellier used the signal lamp, flashing standard identification request. The other ship did not respond. "Try again." Bellier repeated the signal. Still nothing. Fornell arrived with the gun crew. "Do we engage?" "We do not know if it is hostile. We do not know if it is anything." Valcour raised his binoculars. The ship was clearer now and he could see details. The hull configuration was familiar. Too familiar. "Corvette," he said slowly. "What is our hull number?" "K447. Why?" "Look at that ship. Tell me what you see on the bow." Corvette raised his own binoculars. He was silent for a long moment. "I see K447, he said finally. "Captain, that ship has our hull number." The crew on deck had gone very still. Men were staring at the other vessel, some with binoculars, some with naked eyes. No one spoke. "It is a reflection," Fornell said. "Fog and light playing tricks." "Reflections do not appear 200 meters away," Anselm said. "Then it is another ship with the same number. An administrative error. Hull numbers are not duplicated." Valcour lowered his binoculars. "All crew below deck except essential watch. Now." Men moved quickly, grateful for the order. Within minutes, the deck was clear except for Valcour, Corvette, and 2 lookouts. "What are your orders?" Corvette asked. "We wait." "For what?" "To see if it moves." They waited. The other ship remained motionless. As the light failed completely, it faded into the darkness. By 2000 hours, it was invisible. "It is gone," Corvette said, "or we can no longer see it." That night, Valcour did not sleep. He sat in his cabin with the patrol orders on his desk, reading them over and over, looking for something he had missed. The orders were simple, direct, standard. But standard orders do not result in ships that cannot return. Standard orders do not result in transmissions that repeat without response. At 0300 hours, Bellier knocked on his door. "Captain, the signal has changed." They went to the radio room. The transmission was still broadcasting, but the voice was different now. Faster, more urgent. Grid position holding. Cannot maintain. Request immediate. Cannot maintain. Is that the same voice? Valcour asked. I cannot tell. The quality has degraded. They listened for another minute. Then the signal cut off entirely. Try to raise them, Valcour said. Bellier transmitted. No response. He tried again. Still nothing. They are gone, Bellier said. Or they stopped talking. At 0600 hours, Anselm reported that they had drifted another 8 kilometers northeast during the night. They were now far beyond any mapped patrol zone, in water that existed on charts only as depth estimates and blank space. We are not drifting, Anselm said. We are being moved. The rate is too consistent. 5 kilometers every 4 hours. Something is pulling us. Mechanical failure? Kervidek suggested. The engine is off. We have no way to move ourselves. Then we are in a current. Currents do not move in straight lines toward unmapped water. Valcour looked at the chart. Their position was now marked with a red circle, far from the patrol zones, far from any designated shipping lane. If they sent a distress call, rescue would take days. If they sent a distress call. Captain, Fornell said from the doorway, you need to come on deck. The fog had lifted. For the first time in 3 days they could see clearly. The ocean stretched in every direction, flat and gray under the overcast sky. And surrounding them, in a perfect circle roughly 500 meters in radius, were ships. Valcour counted 12. All of them corvettes or similar-sized patrol vessels. All of them stationary. All of them facing inward toward K447. No lights. No movement. No smoke from their stacks. Are they active? Valcour asked. I do not know, Fornell said. They are not responding to signals. Have you tried? Bellier has been transmitting for 10 minutes. No response. Kervidek had his binoculars up. Captain, I can see hull numbers on some of them. And? They are all K-class. British corvettes. I recognized 3 of them from patrol rosters. Which ones? K229, K338, K447. Valcour felt his chest tighten. K447 is our hull number. I know. Then which ship are we on? No one answered. Valcour walked slowly to the rail. He raised his binoculars and examined the ship that Kervidek had identified as K447. It was identical to their vessel. Same configuration, same armament, same weathering on the hull. And on the bridge, barely visible through the windows, he could see shapes. Human shapes, standing perfectly still. Are those men? He asked. Kervidek looked. I think so. They are not moving. Signal them directly. Use the lamp. Bellier aimed the signal lamp at the other K447 and flashed the standard identification request. The men on the bridge did not react. They remained motionless, facing forward as if waiting for something. Try a different ship, Valcour said. Bellier shifted the lamp to K229. Same result. No response, no movement. They are dead ships, Fornell said quietly. Crewed by dead men. Ships do not float themselves, Kervidek replied. If they are here, someone is operating them. Then where are the living crew? No one had an answer. At 1,000 hours, the fog returned. It came quickly, rolling across the water in thick banks that swallowed the surrounding ships one by one. Within minutes, visibility was reduced to 30 meters. This is deliberate, Anselm said. Fog does not move like this. Fog is weather, Valcour replied. It does not have intent. Then explain why it only appears when we can see the other ships. Valcour could not. At 1,200 hours, the transmission returned. This time it was not the calm voice. It was screaming. Cannot hold, breaking apart. Repeat, breaking apart. Too many of us. Then static. Bellier shut off the speaker. His hands were shaking. That was not the same transmission. Are you certain? Yes. The previous transmission was a loop. Same words, same rhythm. This was live. Someone was transmitting in real time. From where? I do not know. The signal is coming from all directions. At 1,500 hours, Valcour assembled the officers in his cabin. We are going to attempt to leave, he said. Full power. Due west. We break through the perimeter. And if we cannot? Kervodek asked. Then we know we are trapped. And if we are trapped? Valcour did not answer. They went to the bridge. Valcour gave the order. The engine roared to life, the ship surged forward. They pushed through the fog, heading west at maximum speed. For 10 minutes they made progress. Then Anselm checked their position. We have not moved. That is not possible. We are at full power. I know. But we are stationary. The water is moving past us, the engine is running, but we are not changing position. Kervodek looked over the side. The water was indeed moving, flowing past the hull as if they were traveling at speed. But the fog remained constant. They were not moving through it. We are on a treadmill, he said quietly. Cut the engine, Valcour ordered. The engine died. The ship settled. The water stopped flowing. We are not going anywhere, Fornell said. We are part of it now. At 1800 hours, as light began to fail again, the fog lifted just enough for them to see the perimeter. The 12 ships were still there, perfectly positioned, perfectly still. And beyond them, barely visible through the thinning fog, more ships. Dozens of them. All facing inward. How many are out there? Kervodek whispered. Valcour did not answer. He was counting. 30, 40, 50 ships. All of them dark. All of them waiting. That night, no one slept. The crew remained at their stations, watching the fog, listening to the silence. The radio continued to broadcast fragments. Sometimes the calm voice. Sometimes the screaming voice. Sometimes other voices, speaking in languages Bellier did not recognize. At 0200 hours, Valcour stood on deck and looked at the surrounding darkness. He knew what this was now. Not a trap. Not an ambush. This was a collection point. Ships were drawn here and could not leave. They remained stationary, crewed by men who had become part of the pattern. He thought about the orders. The sealed envelope. The coordinates. Command had known. They had sent K-447 here deliberately, with full awareness that the ship might not return. The question was why. At 0600 hours, Anselm reported their position. They had drifted another 4 kilometers northeast during the night. The pattern continued. Steady, inevitable, drawing them deeper into the unmapped water. How much farther? Valcour asked. I do not know. The chart ends here. Valcour looked at the blank space on the map. Beyond their current position, there was only white paper and a single notation, survey discontinued. Why would a survey be discontinued? He asked. Lack of funding. Lack of time. Lack of what? Anselm met his eyes. Lack of ships that returned. At 0800 hours on the 8th day, Bellier reported that the radio had gone silent. No transmissions, no static, not even background noise. The frequencies were empty. Check the equipment, Valcour ordered. Bellier ran diagnostics. Everything functioned correctly. The radio could transmit and receive, but there was nothing to receive. It is as if every other transmitter in the Atlantic has stopped broadcasting, Bellier said. That is not possible. I know, but I am scanning all frequencies. Commercial, military, emergency bands. Nothing. We are the only station broadcasting. Then stop broadcasting. Captain? If we are the only ones transmitting, we are announcing our position. Stop all broadcasts immediately. Bellier shut down the transmitter. The radio room fell silent. At 1000 hours, the crew gathered on deck without being ordered. Men stood in small groups, speaking quietly, looking at the fog. Valcour did not order them below. There was no point. They knew something was wrong. Discipline meant nothing if the ship could not move. Fornell approached him. The men are asking questions. What kind of questions? Why we cannot leave. Why the other ships are here. Why command sent us to this location. What did you tell them? That I do not have answers. That is correct. Neither do I. They want to know if we are going to die here. Valcour looked at his chief gunner. Fornell was not a man who frightened easily, but his eyes showed something close to fear now. I do not know, Valcour said honestly, but we are not dead yet. And while we are alive, we maintain routine. We keep watch. We stay ready. Ready for what? For whatever comes next. At 1,200 hours, Anselm reported that the drift had stopped. For the first time in 4 days, the ship was stationary. Are you certain? Valcour asked. I have taken 3 fixes. We have not moved in the last 2 hours. Does that mean we have arrived? Arrived where? Valcour did not answer. He went on deck and looked at the water. It was perfectly calm, almost glass-like. No waves, no ripples. The fog hung motionless in the air. Kervedek joined him. The crew is starting to panic. I know. If we do not give them something to do, discipline will break down. What would you suggest? Lower a boat. Send a team to one of the other ships. See if anyone is alive. Valcour considered this. It violated every instinct he had. But Kervedek was right. The crew needed purpose, needed to feel they were taking action rather than waiting passively. Prepare a boarding party, Valcour said. 4 men, armed. You will lead them. Which ship do we board? The one with our hull number. If we are going to find answers, we start with ourselves. At 1,400 hours, the boat was lowered. Kervedek, Fornell, and 2 crewmen rowed across the still water toward the other K447. The fog swallowed them within 50 meters. Valcour stood at the rail, listening to the sound of oars and water fade into silence. 15 minutes passed, then 30. The boat did not return. At 1,445 hours, Valcour heard something. A voice, distant, calling from the fog. He could not make out words, but the tone was urgent. Bellier, he said. Do we have any portable radio equipment? Yes. Short-range field units. Did Kervedek take one? Bellier's face went pale. No. I did not think to offer it. Valcour closed his eyes briefly. A basic oversight. In the tension and strangeness, they had forgotten simple procedure. If they return, we correct that, Valcour said. We do not make that mistake again. But at 1,500 hours, the boat had not returned. At 1,530 hours, it appeared out of the fog. Empty. The boat drifted alongside K447, bumping gently against the hull. No crew. No equipment. Just the empty boat, oars still in the locks, exactly as it had been when it departed. Get it aboard, Valcour ordered. The boat was hauled up. Anselm examined it carefully. No damage. No blood. No sign of struggle. It was simply empty, as if the 4 men had stepped out of it and walked away. Where did they go? A crewman asked. No one answered. Valcour went to his cabin and locked the door. He sat at his desk and tried to think logically. 4 men had rowed 200 meters to another ship. The boat had returned empty. Possible explanations: they had boarded the other ship and remained there. They had fallen into the water. They had been taken. But the boat showed no signs of panic or struggle. If they had fallen, there would be evidence. If they had been taken, the boat would show damage. If they had boarded the other ship, why return the boat? Unless they had not returned the boat. Unless the boat had returned itself. At 1,700 hours, Bellier reported a transmission. The radio had been silent for hours, but now a signal was coming through. Weak, fragmented, but present. Valcour went to the radio room. The transmission was voice. Mel, speaking slowly. Do not send boats. Repeat. Do not send boats. They will not return. We are still here, but we are not the same. Is that corvette? Valcour asked. Bellier listened carefully. I think so, but the voice sounds wrong. Wrong how? Distant. Like he is speaking from far away, even though the signal is close. Can we respond? Bellier keyed the microphone. Corvette, this is K447. Report your status. Over. Silence. Then the transmission again. Do not send boats. We are here. We are always here. Cannot leave. Cannot. The signal cut off. Was that a loop? Valcour asked. No, it was live. But he is not responding to us. He is just transmitting. Like the others. Yes, like the others. At 1900 hours, as darkness fell, the crew saw lights. They appeared on some of the surrounding ships. Not navigation lights or deck lights, but illumination from within. Pale, flickering, visible through portholes and damaged sections of hull. Those ships have been dark for days, a lookout said. Why lights now? Valcour raised his binoculars. Through the nearest porthole he could see movement. Shadows passing back and forth, human-shaped but moving strangely. Not walking, gliding. Are those men? The lookout asked. I do not know. Should we signal them? No. No more signals. No more boats. We maintain position and observe. That night, the lights moved between ships. They appeared in one vessel, then vanished, then appeared in another. Always pale, always flickering. And always accompanied by shadows that moved in ways that living men should not move. At 0200 hours, Valcour stood on deck and watched the lights dance across the perimeter. Fornell joined him. Those are not our men, Fornell said quietly. No. Then what are they? I think they are what happens when men stay here too long. They become part of it. Part of the pattern. We need to leave. We have tried. We cannot. Then we need to do something else. What do you suggest? Fornell was quiet for a moment. We scuttle the ship. We take the boats and row west. If the ships cannot leave, maybe men can. And if we cannot, then at least we tried. Valcour considered this. It was desperate. It violated every principle of naval command. A captain does not abandon his ship while it is still operational. But operational meant nothing if the ship was trapped. Not yet, Valcour said. We give it 2 more days. If nothing changes, we consider scuttling. 2 days may be too long. 2 days is what we have. On the 9th day, the fog began to change. It grew thicker, denser, until visibility was reduced to less than 10 meters. The surrounding ships disappeared. K447 existed in a small bubble of gray light, isolated from everything. At 0800 hours, Anselm reported that they were drifting again. Not northeast this time. Down. Down? Valcour repeated. Our depth soundings have changed. 8 hours ago, we were in 60 meters of water. Now we are showing 85 meters. The ship is sinking? No. The ship is stable. But the seabed is getting deeper. It is as if the ocean floor is dropping away beneath us. That is not possible. I know. But the soundings do not lie. At 1,000 hours, the depth was 90 meters. At 1,200 hours, 110. The ship remained on the surface, floating normally, but the water beneath them was growing deeper with every hour. We are moving into an abyss, Anselm said quietly. At 1,400 hours, the crew reported sounds. Metallic grinding coming from beneath the ship. It rose and fell in rhythm like something massive breathing. Valcour went to the engine room. The sound was louder here, resonating through the hull. It did not sound mechanical. It sounded organic. What is that? The chief engineer asked. I do not know. Can you trace it? It is coming from outside. Below the waterline. Something is moving down there. At 1,600 hours, the depth reading was 150 meters. The fog lifted slightly, just enough to see the water. It was darker now, almost black, as if the light could not penetrate it. At 1,800 hours, Bellier received another transmission. This time it was not fragmented. It was clear, strong, and spoke in perfect calm. Captain Valcour, you are approaching the threshold. Once you cross it, you cannot return. You have 12 hours to decide. Stay and become part of the fleet, or take your men and leave on the boats. But you must leave the ship. The ship stays. The ship always stays. Valcour stood in the radio room, listening to the silence that followed. Who was that? Bellier asked. I do not know. But they know my name. How? Because they have been listening. They have been listening since we arrived. At 1900 hours, Valcour assembled the remaining crew. 23 men. For we're gone. The rest stood on deck, waiting. We have a decision to make, Valcour said. We can stay with the ship and accept whatever comes. Or we can take the boats and attempt to row west. There is no guarantee that leaving will work. We may end up like the others. But staying guarantees that we become part of this place. What about the men we lost? A crewman asked. What about Kervidek and Fornal? They made their choice when they boarded the other ship. We cannot help them now. We just leave them? We leave the ships. We leave everything. We take only what we can carry and we row until we cannot row anymore. If that is not far enough, at least we tried. The crew was silent. I will not order you to come, Valcour continued. This is not a command. This is a choice. Any man who wants to stay with the ship may do so. Any man who wants to try to leave may take a boat. I am leaving. Who comes with me is up to you. 22 men chose to leave. One, an older crewman named Marchand, chose to stay. I have been at sea for 30 years, Marchand said quietly. If I die on a ship. Not in a boat. Valcour nodded. Understood. At 2,000 hours, they lowered the boats. 3 of them, each carrying 8 men. They had provisions for 3 days, water for 5. Compass, charts, flares. Everything they could carry. Valcour was the last to leave K447. He stood on deck and looked at Marchand. If you change your mind, fire a flare. We will come back. I will not change my mind, Captain. Then God be with you. And with you. Valcour climbed down into the lead boat. The crew began to row. The fog swallowed K447 within minutes. The last thing Valcour saw was Marchand standing at the rail, perfectly still, watching them go. They rowed west. The water was calm, the fog thick, the silence absolute. No sound except oars in water and men breathing. After 1 hour, Anselm checked their position. They had moved less than 500 meters. We are rowing at normal speed, he said. But we are barely moving. Keep rowing, Valcour ordered. After 2 hours, Anselm checked again. They had moved 800 meters total. The rate was slowing. We cannot sustain this, one of the rowers said. We will exhaust ourselves. Then we rest and row again. They rested for 15 minutes. Then continued. The fog remained constant. The water remained calm. Time seemed to stretch and compress. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like minutes. At some point the sun should have risen. But the darkness remained. The fog glowed with a faint gray light that came from nowhere and everywhere. After what Valcour estimated was 6 hours, they stopped to check their position. Anselm took out the compass. The needle spun lazily, unable to find north. We are lost, Anselm said. We keep rowing west. We do not know which way west is. Then we row in one direction and hope. They rowed. The boat moved through still water, surrounded by fog. No landmarks. No reference points. Just endless gray in every direction. Then ahead a shape emerged. A ship. Dark, silent, familiar. K447. No, Anselm whispered. We have been rowing for hours. But there it was. Their ship. exactly where they had left it, and standing at the rail watching them approach was Marchand. The boats drew alongside. The crew sat in stunned silence. "Did we circle back?" someone asked. "We rode in a straight line," Anselm said. "We did not turn." Valcour looked up at Marchand. The old crewman's expression was unreadable. "You came back," Marchand said. "We did not intend to. Intention does not matter here. You cannot leave. None of us can." "How long have we been gone?" "You left 4 hours ago." Valcour looked at Anselm. "How long did we row?" "At least 8 hours. Maybe 10. 4, Marchand repeated. "I watched you disappear into the fog. I counted the hours. 4 hours ago." Valcour made a decision. "Get back on board." "Captain, if we—" "Get on board. Now." The crews climbed back onto K447. The boats were hauled up and secured. Men stood on deck, exhausted, defeated. "We tried," Valcour said quietly. "That is more than most. Now we know. The ship stays. We stay with it." At 0200 hours on the 10th day, the transmission returned. This time it spoke with multiple voices, overlapping, echoing. "Welcome to the fleet, K447. You are the 53rd ship. You will hold position with the others. You will wait. Eventually more will come. They always come." "Wait for what?" Valcour asked the empty radio room. The voices answered. "For the threshold to lower. For the deep to rise. For the pattern to complete." "What pattern?" "The pattern of return. What was sent down is coming back. What was mapped is mapping us. The survey was never discontinued. It was reversed." Bellier looked at Valcour. "Captain, what does that mean?" "It means we were sent here to be documented. Not to document." At 0600 hours, the depth reading was 230 meters. The ship remained on the surface, but the water beneath them had become an abyss. At 0800 hours, Marchand reported movement on the surrounding ships. Crews were appearing on deck. Men who had not been visible for days were now standing at their rails, facing inward, watching K447. "Are they alive?" Valcour asked. "They are moving, but not like living men." At 1000 hours, the first crewman changed. His name was Rousseau. He was standing watch when it happened. He stopped moving. His eyes went distant. He began to speak in a monotone. "Holding position. Cannot return. Waiting for completion." The other crew members backed away. Valcour approached carefully. "Rousseau, can you hear me?" "Holding position. Cannot return. Look at me." Rousseau turned his head slowly. His eyes were empty, unfocused. "I am here, Captain. I'm always here. We are all always here." At 1200 hours, 3 more men changed. By 1400 hours, 7. They stopped performing their duties and stood at various points on the ship, facing inward, repeating the same phrases. "How long before we all change?" Anselm asked. "I do not know," Valcour said. "But when it happens, we will no longer care." At 1800 hours, Valcour stood on the bridge and watched his crew. 15 men had changed. 8 remained. He could see the fear in their eyes, the knowledge that their time was running out. Bellier was still himself. So was Anselm. So was Marchand. A few others whose names Valcour was starting to forget. That frightened him more than anything. He was forgetting his own crew. "Captain," Bellier said, "the transmission is changing again." They went to the radio room. The voices were different now. Younger. Speaking in languages Bellier recognized as more recent. "Arrived yesterday. Ship will not move, requesting instructions." "No response from command, fuel running low, what are our orders?" "Something is wrong with the crew, they are not responding, they just stand there." These were recent transmissions. Ships that had arrived within the last year, perhaps the last month. Ships that had gone through the same process K447 was going through now. How many ships are in this fleet? Bellier asked. 53, Valcour said. According to the transmission, we are the 53rd. And they are all here? Trapped like us? Yes. For how long? Some of them for decades. Some of them for weeks. Time does not work the same way here. At 2000 hours, Marchand changed. Valcour watched it happen. The old crewman simply stopped mid-sentence and his expression went blank. Holding position, Marchand said, "Cannot return." Waiting. Valcour backed away. Only 6 men remained unchanged. Himself, Bellier, Anselm, and 3 crewmen. "How much longer do we have?" one of the crewmen asked. "I do not know," Valcour said honestly, "but I suggest you hold on to who you are for as long as possible." That night, Valcour did not sleep. He sat in his cabin writing a final report. He documented everything. The coordinates, the drift, the ships, the voices, the changes. He wrote it all down in careful detail, knowing that it would never be read, knowing that the report would remain in his cabin when the ship was eventually found, decades or centuries from now. At 0300 hours, he heard footsteps outside his door. Slow, deliberate. He looked through the porthole and saw his crew walking in circles on deck. The changed ones. 20 men now, moving in perfect synchronization, walking the same path over and over. At 0600 hours on the 11th day, Bellier changed. Valcour heard it happen. Bellier was in the radio room monitoring frequencies when his voice went flat. Holding position. Cannot return. Waiting. Valcour went to the radio room. Bellier stood motionless, staring at the equipment. "Bellier," Valcour said. No response. Anselm was next. At 0800 hours, while checking their position, he simply stopped. Set down his instruments. Turned to face inward. "Holding position," Anselm said. "Cannot return." By 1000 hours, only Valcour and 2 crewmen remained. They stood together on the bridge, watching the changed crew walk their endless circles. "Captain," one of the crewmen said. His name was Durant. "I can feel it. Something pressing against my thoughts. Like it is waiting for me to stop resisting. Then keep resisting." "For how long?" "For as long as you can." Durant lasted until 1200 hours. The other crewman, Lefebvre, lasted until 1400 hours. At 1500 hours, Captain Rémi Valcour stood alone on the bridge of K447, the last man unchanged, the last man resisting. He could feel it now. The pressure. The pull. The invitation to simply stop fighting and accept what was inevitable. To join the pattern. To become part of the fleet. He thought about his orders. The sealed envelope. The coordinates. Command had sent him here knowing what would happen. They had sent 53 ships, all of them with crews who followed orders, who trusted procedure, who believed they were serving a purpose. But the purpose had never been patrol. The purpose had been to feed this place, to give it what it wanted. More ships, more crew, more pieces of the pattern. At 1700 hours, Valcour finished his report. He sealed it in an envelope and placed it in the ship's log. Then he went on deck. The crew stood in formation, all of them facing inward, all of them perfectly still. Beyond them, visible now through the thinning fog, the rest of the fleet. 52 other ships, all dark, all waiting. Valcour walked to the rail and looked at the water. It was black now, completely opaque. The depth reading showed 300 meters. An impossible depth for this region. But impossible had stopped meaning anything days ago. He felt the pressure increase, felt his thoughts beginning to slow, felt the resistance fading. "No," he said aloud. The word echoed across the still water. "No," he said again louder. He would not join them. He would not stand in formation. He would not wait for completion. He climbed over the rail and dropped into the water. The cold was shocking, absolute. He sank quickly, the weight of his uniform pulling him down. Above him, the hull of K447 receded. Around him, darkness. He thought he would drown quickly, but he did not. He kept sinking, kept falling, the pressure increasing but not crushing him. The darkness grew absolute, and then he saw light. Far below, impossibly deep, something glowed. Not with normal light, but with a pale luminescence that hurt to look at. It pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Valcour stopped sinking. He hung suspended in the water, unable to move up or down, forced to watch as the light grew brighter, closer. It was rising. The thing beneath the fleet, the thing that had drawn the ships here, the thing that had changed the cruise. It was coming up. Valcour tried to scream, but water filled his mouth. Tried to swim, but his limbs would not respond. He could only watch as the light approached, as the shape became visible. It was vast. Larger than any ship, larger than anything that should exist. And it was not solid. It shifted and flowed, parts of it extending and retracting, as if it was constantly reconstructing itself from the water around it. And covering its surface, embedded in its substance, were ships. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All of them dark, all of them perfectly preserved, all of them held in place like specimens in a collection. Valcour understood then. This was not a trap. This was not an ambush. This was harvest. The thing beneath the fleet was collecting ships the way a naturalist collects insects, preserving them, studying them, adding them to its archive. The light surrounded him. He felt himself being pulled downward toward the mass of ships. He tried to resist, but there was nothing to resist with. His body was already changing, already being preserved. His last conscious thought was of his report, sealed in the ship's log. Someone would find it eventually. Someone would read what happened here. But he knew they would not understand. Not really. Not unless they came here themselves. Not unless they saw it. At 1800 hours on the 11th day, K447 went dark. The lights extinguished. The engine stopped. The crew stood motionless on deck, their eyes blank, their expressions empty. The ship took its position in the perimeter, the 53rd vessel in the fleet, and waited. Captain Rémi Valcour was no longer aboard. His body hung suspended 200 meters below the surface, perfectly preserved, held in place by something that existed beyond human understanding. And far beneath him, in the absolute darkness of the deep, the thing that had collected 53 ships continued to wait, patient, timeless, gathering.